Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent. And on this channel, I talk about the mythology, lore, history of the fictional worlds in Dungeons & Dragons. Now this is the start of a mini-series on the campaign setting Ravenloft. And if you live in the future, you can click in the top right corner and be taken to a full playlist, but if not, I will be releasing videos weekly. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about the history of Ravenloft and a bit about its expanded universe that's more than just Strahd the Vampire.
But Jordan, Ravenloft is just the name of Strahd's castle. How is a single adventure an entire campaign setting?
You're not wrong. Ravenloft started as an adventure, but it was so popular that it evolved into a complete campaign setting. Now, the module Ravenloft was a standalone advanced Dungeons & Dragons adventure, number I-6 specifically, published in 1983. It was extremely popular, which allowed for a sequel to be written and released in 1986 called Ravenloft 2, The House on Griffin Hill. There was even a gamebook novel called The Master of Ravenloft, and looking it up, I thought this was just a novel at first, but apparently TSR created some choose-your-own-adventure style books called gamebooks, where you would have a character and roll some dice to see how you progress through this story. Which, now that I know this exists, I need to find it immediately. And yes, there were also traditional novels created in the Ravenloft universe. People still wanted more Ravenloft, though. In fact, many had been playing in a Ravenloft-esque setting of their own making. So, in 1990, with AD&D 2nd Edition, Ravenloft was released as a full, official campaign setting, which greatly expanded on the mythology of Strahd, Borovia, and what lies beyond the mist. Now, this was commonly known as the Black Box, and later in 1994, it was reprinted as a revised edition, which is the version that you can find on DriveThruRPG. Links down in the description below, the doobly-doo. That box set includes the book Realm of Terror that redefined certain classes and how their abilities work within the idea of what is Ravenloft. If a paladin can detect evil, the mystery of what is going on gets revealed too easily. Your key abilities, spells, or beliefs might not be the solid foundation that you once had. And it also expanded on fear, horror, and madness mechanics to up the ante in a Ravenloft campaign. Now, the second book included in the box set was Domains and Denizens, which described all of the dark lands that exist in Ravenloft. Known as the Domains of Dread, they were imagined to be separate demiplanes where evil creatures live eternal punishments. Some of them know that they are trapped there, and others are confused as to why they are fighting an endless battle. Now, although Ravenloft is the name of Strahd's castle, it has since evolved into the name of the entire campaign setting. Borovia is the location of Strahd and where Curse of Strahd takes place, but that is just one of the Domains of Dread in the setting that is Ravenloft. So these domains, they kind of act like prisons, which keep not only your D&D character trapped, but also the doomed individual whom the Domain of Dread was created for. Looking at this map, you can see Borovia in the center, but there are many other locations created as the setting was developed. Borca, Darkon, Morden, Tempest, and more. Each domain is separated by a misty border that allows creatures to enter, but not leave, trapping the few unlucky mortals that make their way there. Now, all of these domains together are known as the Lands of the Core, and your mission could be to escape a specific domain only to wind up in another one. Or perhaps your adventures will take you between these domains of dread for some larger quest to rid the world of vampires.
So is Strahd like the strongest? Does he rule the whole Ravenloft core thing?
No, Strahd is but one Dark Lord and rules his domain, Borovia. Other evil creatures rule other parts of the core. Darkon, for example, is ruled by Azalin, the Lich. Now, Cartacus' ruler is Harkon Lucas, a wolf-were, which is a type of werewolf that isn't a werewolf because they don't have the lycanthropy curse, but they are still a hybrid wolf-man thing called a wolf-were, apparently. Ravenloft was re-released for D&D 3.5 and was bundled into the Manual of the Planes for 4th edition D&D. Now for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, the adventure Curse of Strahd was released in 2016, and this was designed to be a retelling of the original i6 Ravenloft AD&D module, but it changed to fit a 5e format, and because of that became more of a sandbox to explore. Because of its sandboxness, it kind of expanded on the lore and the geography of Borovia. Now the core isn't really on a planet or a specific plane of existence or anything like that, which in my opinion makes Ravenloft interesting and one of a kind. The Ravenloft campaign setting is supposedly located in the ethereal plane, but there isn't a direct path to or from. The domains of dread were prisons, and the quote fun of the campaign setting is the emotional and physical obstacles your characters need to overcome to escape the domains of dread. You'll have to face fear and root out evil in order to save yourself and others. Now, because the ethereal plane is everywhere, one could be taken into Ravenloft just about anywhere. Now, the phlogiston in Spelljammer is the one exception. There, planar travel is blocked entirely, but in normal wild space, yes, your Spelljammer could fly into that nebula only to wind up in Borovia, which honestly sounds pretty sweet. Ravenloft was, well, it is the go-to setting for gothic horror in Dungeons & Dragons. In traditional fantasy D&D, your characters are heroes and are larger than life. There is very little to fear because your characters are there to save the day. For Ravenloft, you're allowed to be a bit confused, weirded out. Why isn't my channel divinity working? I can't teleport. Why can't I teleport? As a dungeon master, you're encouraged to build dread and fear. Knowing at any moment that Strahd could probably rush in and kill you all is terrifying. To him, it's much more fun to break you emotionally, though, before he kills you. Now, the creatures responsible for the domains of dread are some extremely powerful entities known as the Dark Powers. They have never been statted or truly explained in the lore of D&D, and they act more of a malevolent force. No one really knows their exact number or what they really are. And for the sake of Ravenloft, they're there to serve as a plot device. The Dark Powers keep you in Ravenloft just as they keep creatures like Strahd in Ravenloft. You might be tormented by the vampire Strahd, but rest assured, he is suffering at the hands of the Dark Powers. Borovia, well, Ravenloft, has its own timeline. In the supplement Realms of Terror, there is a timeline that explains the formation of the Domains of Dread. See, Borovia was the first, carved out of the ethereal plane. Strahd made a deal with the Dark Powers, and in doing so became the first vampire. And everything that was Strahd and Borovia became part of the Domain of Dread. When Borovia was enveloped, its people became cursed along with Strahd. And this occurred in 351 BC, which stands for Borovian calendar. Now, I'm assuming the Borovian calendar was their local calendar, wherever Borovia originally came from. We don't really know. Now, in 470 BC, Madame Eva and Strahd forged an alliance. Madame Eva is a half-Vistani fortune teller who wishes to free Strahd from his prison, and there's more to her than that, but I don't want to spoil the entire Curse of Strahd campaign. Now, as time progresses, some heroes got lost in Borovia, and this is the premise for the Ravenloft module, which occurs in 528 BC. Later on, other evil entities arrive, and their own personal hells are created adjacent to Borovia. By 542 BC, Azalin the Lich appears, 579, Dracon appears, all the way up to 740, where a prophecy is said to be fulfilled called the Grand Conjunction. Now, this was a series of adventures that revolved around Ravenloft, and we'll talk about those more in another video as the exploration of the Ravenloft campaign setting continues. Now, Ravenloft has about 24 domains, and each one is a personal prison to characters like Strahd. It is best to think of them as very small countries with physical and political borders. Now, off of the main continent, there is the Sea of Sorrows, and even further, there are Islands of Terror. Now, these are smaller and, well, more isolated domains of dread, but even beyond that, there are smaller areas known as clusters and pockets. Vecna, the Whispered One, was famously trapped in one of those clusters known as the Burning Peaks. He was able to steal some divinity from a rival and punch his way out of Ravenloft into Sigil. Now, if you're curious about that, check out this video for information on Vecna and the adventure Vecna Reborn. Have you played in a non-Borovia Ravenloft game? Would you? Do you think that there needs to be changes to any spells or other mechanics to make Ravenloft's horror work? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe for more Ravenloft coverage. I'll be diving into more detail on specific domains of dread, their dark lords, and the plethora of adventures that were written there. Special thanks to my patrons on Patreon for supporting me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all